Inquisitor moved like death-given form, his red lightsaber a blur of lethal precision as he engaged both Jedi simultaneously. Tony had seen skilled fighters before, had sparred with Cap and fought alongside Natasha, but this was something else. The dark side warrior fought with a savage efficiency that made every movement count, his blade weaving patterns that seemed designed to kill rather than disarm. "Protect the Chancellor," Obi-Wan shouted, driving the Inquisitor back with a series of precise strikes. But the Darksider simply laughed, his free hand extending toward Palpatine's position. Tony felt the air pressure change. Something invisible grabbed the Chancellor, lifting him off his feet. Force telekinesis. Jarvis identified it, but Tony didn't need the technical term. He needed a solution. His repulsors fired, not at the Inquisitor, but at the floor between them, creating a shock wave that disrupted whatever concentration the Darksider needed. Palpatine dropped, gasping, and Anakin was there instantly, putting himself between the Chancellor and their attacker. "Clever," the Inquisitor said, his mechanical voice carrying a hint of amusement. "But parlor tricks won't save you, Metal Man. Count Dooku has studied the recordings from the battle. We know your weaknesses now." Two commando droids flanked Tony from opposite sides, their movements perfectly synchronized. They fired not at his armor, but at the ground around him, forcing him to adjust his footing, making him predictable. The third droid came from above, dropping from a ceiling vent with a vibroblade aimed at his neck joint, the one spot his damaged shields couldn't fully protect. Tony twisted, repulsor firing at point-blank range. The droid exploded in a shower of sparks, but the distraction had served its purpose. The Inquisitor disengaged from the Jedi and moved, his speed enhanced by the Force, red blade descending toward Tony's exposed reactor. Anakin intercepted, his blue lightsaber meeting red in a shower of sparks. The two blades locked, and Tony saw the Inquisitor's surprise as the younger Jedi matched his strength. "You're strong," the Darksider acknowledged. "The dark side calls to you, young Skywalker. I can feel it. Your anger, your fear. You could be so much more than a servant of the Jedi's dying order." "I serve the light," Anakin gritted out, but Tony heard the strain in his voice. Whatever this Inquisitor was doing, it was getting to him. "Jarvis, scan that guy. What makes him tick?" "Sir, he appears to be using the Force to create localized pressure differentials and sensory distortions. It's affecting General Skywalker's emotional state, sophisticated psychological warfare combined with combat prowess." Tony didn't understand the Force, but he understood psychology and manipulation, and he understood that Anakin was being played like a fiddle. "Hey, Darth Wannabe!" Tony fired a repulsor blast that forced the Inquisitor to disengage. "You want me? Come get me. Leave the Jedi to their meditation or whatever." The Inquisitor's attention snapped to Tony, and for the first time, Tony felt it. That dark energy, focused and malevolent, pressing against his mind like invisible fingers. It tried to find purchase, looking for fear, anger, anything to exploit. But Tony Stark had spent 6 months in a cave being tortured. He'd held Infinity Stones. He'd sacrificed himself to save the universe. His mind was a fortress built from trauma, genius, and sheer stubborn will. "That's cute," Tony said. "Really? Very intimidating. But I've got Jarvis running white noise in my neural implants, and your Jedi mind tricks need something to latch onto. What you're getting is elevator music and math equations." The Inquisitor's stance shifted, uncertainty, maybe anger. "Impossible. Nothing is immune to the Force." "I'm not immune. I'm just really well insulated." Tony's micro-missiles launched from his shoulder mounts. "And really well armed." The Inquisitor deflected the missiles with his lightsaber, the explosions tearing up Palpatine's office. But it bought Obi-Wan the opening he needed. The Jedi Master's blade struck low. cutting through the Inquisitor's leg at the knee. The Darksider screamed, pain and fury mixed together, and his red lightsaber carved a wild arc that nearly took Obi-Wan's head off. But the wound had done its job. The Inquisitor was down, his combat effectiveness reduced. "Fall back," he snarled at his remaining droids. Objective failed. Retreat Protocol Sigma 9. The commando droids moved instantly, throwing thermal detonators that forced everyone to take cover. When the smoke cleared, the Inquisitor and his forces were gone, vanished into the maintenance tunnels like ghosts. Tony's sensors tracked their withdrawal, but they were moving too fast through too many corridors. "Jarvis, can we follow?" "Not with our current mobility, sir. Your repulsors are operating at barely 50%. A sustained chase would risk complete system failure." Tony swore under his breath. The Inquisitor had escaped, which meant Count Dooku now had combat footage from a second engagement. They were learning about him faster than he was learning about them. "Is everyone all right?" Obi-Wan asked, deactivating his lightsaber. The Jedi Master's robes were scorched, and he had a cut across his cheek, but he moved with the same measured calm as before. "I'm fine," Anakin said, but his hands were shaking slightly as he put away his weapon. The confrontation with the Inquisitor had affected him more than he wanted to admit. Palpatine emerged from behind his desk, looking appropriately shaken for a politician who just survived an assassination attempt. "Gentlemen, you saved my life. The Republic is in your debt." "Just doing our duty, Chancellor," Obi-Wan said, though Tony noticed the Jedi was studying Palpatine carefully. "Though I'm concerned about how the Separatists penetrated Senate security so easily, this building should be impregnable." "An investigation will be launched immediately," Palpatine assured him. "Though I suspect we'll find that my security staff was compromised. The Separatists have proven adept at infiltration." Tony's sensors had been recording everything throughout the fight. Now Jarvis played back a critical moment. When the Inquisitor had first burst through the door, there had been a microsecond delay before the office's security systems had engaged. Almost like they'd been waiting for authorization. "Chancellor," Tony said carefully, "your security systems, who has override codes?" "Myself, my senior staff, and the head of Senate security." Palpatine frowned. "You think the breach came from inside my own office?" "I think anyone smart enough to plan this attack would have inside help at the highest levels," Tony said. "They knew we'd be here, knew the office layout, knew exactly when to strike for maximum impact. That's not just good intelligence, that's someone with direct access." The implication hung in the air. Obi-Wan and Anakin exchanged troubled glances. Palpatine's expression darkened with what looked like genuine concern. "I'll personally review everyone with access," the Chancellor said quietly. "If there's a traitor in my inner circle, they'll be found." Clone troopers arrived, securing the office and establishing a defensive perimeter. Captain Rex appeared, his armor marked with carbon scoring from his own battles elsewhere in the building. "Sir, the commandos have been neutralized throughout the building. 6 Jedi casualties, 32 clone casualties, and approximately 40 civilian casualties from collateral damage." Rex's professional report couldn't quite hide his anger. The bastards used Senate staff as shields. Tony felt his arc reactor pulse with sympathetic rage. Using civilians as cover. He'd seen terrorists do the same thing back home, and it never got easier to stomach. "The wounded?" Obi-Wan asked. "Being treated. Medical facilities are overwhelmed but managing." Rex looked at Tony. "Sir, the men wanted me to pass along their thanks. Your intervention in the battle saved a lot of lives today. The 501st considers you one of us now." "I'm not a soldier," Tony said, but the words felt hollow. He'd just fought beside these clones, bled alongside them in spirit if not body. They'd trusted him with their lives, And he delivered. That meant something. Could have fooled me, Rex said with something approaching a smile. You fight like you've been doing it for years. Practice makes perfect. Tony's HUD showed multiple system warnings. His armor was in rough shape. The fight with the Inquisitor had pushed his already damaged systems to their limits. I need a workshop, somewhere I can repair my equipment before it fails completely. The Jedi Temple has the best facilities on Coruscant, Obi-Wan offered. We can provide materials, tools, whatever you need. And security, Anakin added. After today, the Separatists know you're here. They'll keep coming until they either capture you or eliminate you as a threat. Tony wanted to refuse, to maintain his independence, to avoid becoming another asset in someone else's war. But the pragmatic part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive through Afghanistan, alien invasions, and Thanos, knew they were right. He needed time, resources, and protection to get his armor back to fighting shape. Fine, Tony said. But I work alone in my shop. No observation, no technical consultants, no Jedi watching over my shoulder. My technology stays mine. Agreed, Obi-Wan said without hesitation. Though I suspect Master Yoda will want to speak with you again. After today's events, the Council will have questions. The Council always has questions, Anakin muttered, earning a reproving look from his former master. As they prepared to leave, Tony looked back at Palpatine. The Chancellor stood among the ruins of his office, surrounded by clone guards, looking every inch the beleaguered leader trying to hold a fracturing government together. But Tony couldn't shake the feeling he'd gotten during their conversation, that sense of something off, something hidden beneath the grandfatherly facade. Chancellor, Tony said, about your offer. I'll think about it. But understand this, I don't work for governments or politicians. I work with people I trust, on terms I set. If I help you, it's because I've decided it's the right thing to do, not because I've been bought or manipulated. Palpatine's smile was warm and understanding. I would expect nothing less, Mr. Stark. Take your time. The offer stands whenever you're ready. As they left the Senate building, Tony's mind raced through everything he'd learned. A war that seemed orchestrated from both sides. A Sith Lord hiding in plain sight. An Inquisitor who'd nearly captured him. Clone soldiers treated as expendable property. Jedi compromised by their role as generals. And a Chancellor who said all the right things while Tony's instincts screamed warnings. Jarvis, compile everything we've learned. I need a comprehensive analysis. Already working on it, sir. But I must note, this situation is far more complex than our usual conflicts. Multiple factions, unclear allegiances, and philosophical elements that defy quantitative analysis. The Force stuff. Precisely. I cannot model predictions when one of the primary variables operates outside known physical laws. Tony watched Coruscant pass by through the transport's windows, a planet-sized city with trillions of beings, all caught in a war they didn't fully understand. Somewhere down there, people were mourning the casualties from today's battles. Somewhere, the Inquisitor was reporting to Count Dooku. Somewhere, the mysterious Sith Lord was moving his pieces on a galactic chessboard. And Tony Stark, genius billionaire philanthropist from another universe entirely, had just become a major piece in a game he barely understood. Sir, Jarvis said quietly, I've completed language translation. Full database of Republic Basic now available. Additionally, I've been monitoring Republic News networks. You're famous. What? The battle footage has spread across the holonet. Mystery warrior in metal armor saves Coruscant is the leading story on every major outlet. They're calling you the Iron Knight. Tony groaned. Of course they are. Anakin laughed, the first genuine sound of amusement Tony had heard from the intense young Jedi. Welcome to galactic fame. It's not all it's cracked up to be. Speaking from experience, I'm the chosen one, Anakin said with bitter humor. Prophesied to bring balance to the Force. Every decision I make, every battle I fight, gets analyzed by beings who think they know my destiny better than I do. Destiny's overrated, Tony said. I prefer making my own future. That, Obi-Wan said quietly, is precisely what worries the Council about you both. They rode the rest of the way to the temple in silence, but Tony felt a kinship forming with Anakin, two beings chafing against the expectations placed on them, trying to forge their own paths in a galaxy that wanted to define them by prophecy and politics. The temple loomed ahead, ancient and imposing. Tony's new workshop awaited, and with it, the chance to repair his armor and begin seriously analyzing this strange new galaxy. But as they landed on the platform, Tony caught sight of clone troopers taking up positions around the temple's perimeter. Protection, or a very comfortable cage. He was about to find out which. The Jedi Temple's industrial fabrication level existed in stark contrast to the serene meditation chambers above, all humming machinery, sparking welders, and the organized chaos of maintenance droids working on damaged starfighters. They'd given Tony an entire section to himself, a workshop space that would have made any Earth engineer weep with envy. Advanced tools whose functions he was still figuring out, materials fabrication systems that could synthesize compounds on demand, and enough raw materials to rebuild his armor twice over. The catch: clone guards stationed at every entrance. Subtle, professional, but definitely there. Tony had been working for 6 hours straight, his armor's components spread across 3 workbenches, while Jarvis ran continuous diagnostics. The arc reactor sat in its housing, pulsing steadily. The one piece of technology that had survived the dimensional crossing completely intact. Everything else needed attention. Left repulsor housing showing microfractures, Jarvis reported. The energy discharge from the Inquisitor's lightsaber created thermal stress beyond design specifications. Lightsabers. Tony carefully extracted the damaged component, examining it under enhanced magnification. Plasma contained in a magnetic field, except the field is generated by these kyber crystals through some kind of force resonance. That shouldn't be possible by any physics I understand. Sir, I would suggest embracing the empirical evidence. We're in a universe where physical laws demonstrably differ from our own. The Force appears to be a fundamental force of nature here, equivalent to gravity or electromagnetism in our reality. Tony hated admitting Jarvis was right, but the evidence was overwhelming. He'd watched Jedi move objects with their minds, deflect blaster bolts through precognition, and sense things that no technology could detect. The Force was real, and it operated on principles his science couldn't explain yet being the operative word. Jarvis, start a new project file. Force analysis. I want everything we've observed documented, measured, and analyzed. If it's a fundamental force, it has rules. Rules can be understood. And exploited? Let's start with understood and see where that takes us. Tony began rebuilding the repulsor housing, his hands moving with practiced precision. What's the status on that Separatist transmission you intercepted? Still encrypted, sir. Their security protocols are quite sophisticated. Quantum-entangled encryption keys, rotating algorithms. However, I've made progress. Based on transmission timing and duration, I believe it was tactical intelligence rather than simple status reporting. Someone feeding them real-time data during the Senate attack. Tony's jaw tightened. Palpatine was right about one thing. There's a spy operating at the highest levels. The workshop door hissed open. Tony's hand moved reflexively toward the repulsor gauntlet on the workbench before he recognized the newcomer. Captain Rex, carrying 2 steaming containers that smelled surprisingly appetizing. "Figured you hadn't eaten," Rex said, setting one container on a clear section of workbench. "Can't fight on an empty stomach. Trust me, I've tried." Tony pulled off his helmet. He'd been wearing the partial armor while working and accepted the food. Some kind of protein with vegetables, simple but well prepared. "Thanks, though I'm guessing you're not just here for a welfare check." Rex's expression confirmed it. "The men are talking. About you, about today's battle. Some of them are saying you're a sign, that maybe we don't have to rely on the Force and lightsabers to win this war. That technology and tactics can beat Jedi powers. That bothers you. It makes me think." Rex leaned against a workbench, careful not to disturb anything. "We were created to fight alongside the Jedi, bred and trained to follow their lead without question. But you don't follow anyone. You fight your own way, make your own decisions. And it works." Tony heard the unspoken question. "What does that mean for us?" "Rex, I'm not trying to start a philosophical revolution in the clone army." "Maybe you should." The words came out harder than Rex probably intended. "Do you know what happens to clones who ask too many questions, who think too much? We get reconditioned, sent back to Camino for behavioral adjustment. We're property, Mr. Stark. Biological droids with enough personality to make us useful, but not enough autonomy to be dangerous." Tony set down his food, giving Rex his full attention. "You're not property. You're sentient beings with individual thoughts, personalities, and rights. The fact that someone grew you in a lab instead of a womb doesn't change that. Try telling that to the Kaminoans who created us, or the Senate that purchased us, or even the Jedi who command us." Rex's voice carried years of suppressed frustration. "General Skywalker treats us like brothers. General Kenobi respects us as soldiers. But the Council, we're acceptable casualties in service to the greater good. That's why you're here," Tony realized. "Not just to bring me food. You want to know if I'm going to challenge the system. I want to know if you see us as people or tools." Rex met Tony's eyes. "Because if the former, maybe there's hope for change. If the latter, you're just another user in a galaxy full of them." Tony considered his response carefully. This was a pivotal moment, not just for Rex, but for every clone who'd fought beside him, who'd started seeing him as something other than another authority figure. "In my world," Tony began, "I spent years building weapons for my government. Convinced myself I was protecting people, keeping them safe. Then I got captured, saw my weapons in the hands of terrorists, watched them used to destroy the very people I thought I was protecting. It broke something in me." Rex listened intently, his professional soldier's mask slipping to show genuine curiosity. "When I got free, I stopped making weapons for others, started using my technology myself, taking personal responsibility for every action. And I learned something important. Systems don't change because the people at the top suddenly grow consciences. They change because individuals at every level start asking questions, demanding better, refusing to accept that's how it's always been." "You're talking about rebellion," Rex said quietly. "I'm talking about thinking for yourself, about recognizing your own value and demanding others do the same." Tony picked up a small component, turning it over in his hands. "The clone army is the backbone of this republic's defense. Without you, the Separatists win in a matter of months. That gives you leverage, if you choose to use it. The Jedi would never allow. The Jedi don't own you. Neither does the Senate. You're soldiers, not slaves, and it's past time this galaxy started treating you that way." Tony looked at Rex directly. "But that change has to come from within. I can't fight that battle for you. I'm not even from this universe. But I can tell you that in my experience, freedom isn't given. It's taken by people brave enough to demand it." Rex was quiet for a long moment, processing. "The Jedi won't like you talking this way. The Council already considers you a disruptive influence." "Yeah, I get that a lot." Tony returned to his work, rebuilding the repulsor housing with precise movements. "But I didn't ask to be here, and I'm not going to pretend this galaxy's problems don't exist just to make people comfortable. If that makes me disruptive, so be it." "General Skywalker speaks highly of you," Rex said. "Says you remind him of himself, someone who questions authority and follows his own code." "Anakin's got potential," Tony agreed, "but he's wound too tight. All that power, all that responsibility, and I get the sense the Jedi Council doesn't know what to do with him, so they try to control him through doctrine and rules, which only makes him chafe harder. You think he could fall to the dark side?" It wasn't a question. Tony looked at Rex, seeing the clone's tactical mind working through possibilities. "I think he's being pulled in too many directions. The Council wants him to be the perfect Jedi. Palpatine treats him like a son and confidant. The war forces him to make impossible choices, and underneath it all, he's got anger and fear he doesn't know how to process." "That's what the dark side feeds on," Rex said. "Fear, anger, aggression. At least, that's what the Jedi tell us." "Maybe. Or maybe it's more complicated than light versus dark, good versus evil." Tony activated his rebuilt repulsor, testing the energy flow. "Power distribution optimal," Jarvis confirmed. "In my experience, people don't fall to darkness because they're evil. They fall because they're desperate, because they're convinced they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons." The workshop door opened again, and this time it was Obi-Wan, his robes immaculate despite the day's battles. The Jedi Master took in the scene, Tony working, Rex talking, with an expression Tony couldn't quite read. "Captain Rex, I believe the 501st needs their commanding officer. We're deploying to the Outer Rim in 3 hours." "Yes, sir." Rex saluted, nodded to Tony, and left. But Tony caught the look in the clone's eyes, thoughtful, questioning, awakened. Once they were alone, Obi-Wan moved through the workshop, examining the scattered armor components with genuine interest. "Remarkable engineering. I've never seen anything quite like it. The power source alone, this arc reactor of yours, it's a revolution in energy generation." "Yeah, well, I built it to keep myself alive originally. The armor came later." Tony didn't stop working, but he was acutely aware of Obi-Wan's presence. The Jedi radiated that calm authority, but underneath Tony sensed calculation. "I heard some of your conversation with Rex," Obi-Wan said, confirming Tony's suspicion that he'd been listening longer than his entrance suggested. "You're encouraging the clones to question their place in the Republic. I'm encouraging them to think for themselves. There's a difference." "Is there?" Obi-Wan's tone remained neutral, but Tony heard the edge. "The clone army operates on discipline and chain of command. If they start questioning orders, deciding for themselves what fights are worth fighting, the Republic's defense crumbles." Tony set down his tools and turned to face the Jedi directly. "Is that really your concern? Or are you worried that thinking clones might start asking uncomfortable questions about the Jedi's role in this war?" Obi-Wan's expression tightened. "We serve the Republic. We protect innocent lives. That's not in question. Isn't it? You're peacekeepers who've become generals. Warrior monks leading armies in a war that seems designed to never end. At what point do you step back and ask if you're being used?" Tony crossed his arms. "At what point do you wonder if the war itself is the goal, not the victory?" "You've been here less than a day," Obi-Wan said, and for the first time, Tony heard genuine frustration in his voice. "You don't understand the complexities, the history, the stakes involved." "You're right. I don't understand your galaxy's history, but I understand patterns. I understand manipulation and control masquerading as necessity. Tony's voice hardened. In my world, I watched good people do terrible things because they were convinced it was for the greater good. I did terrible things. And looking back, most of those decisions were made because someone in power told us there was no other choice. There's always another choice. Obi-Wan was silent, his blue eyes studying Tony with uncomfortable intensity. Finally, he spoke. Master Yoda sensed something in you when you arrived. A disruption in the Force, he called it. Not dark, not light, but something else. He warned that your presence would force choices, reveal truths we might prefer to keep hidden. And that scares you. It concerns me, Obi-Wan corrected. Change isn't inherently good or bad, Mr. Stark, but uncontrolled change forced by an outside element who doesn't understand the consequences. He trailed off. We've spent 3 years fighting this war. We're exhausted, compromised, and yes, questioning ourselves. The last thing we need is someone amplifying those doubts. Tony understood then. Obi-Wan wasn't angry or defensive. He was tired. Tired of war. Tired of compromises. Tired of watching the Jedi Order slowly corrupt itself in service to a republic that might not deserve saving. The Jedi Master was holding on by his fingernails, and Tony's presence threatened to shake loose his grip. I'm not trying to make your life harder, Tony said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his tone. But I'm not going to pretend I don't see problems just because fixing them is difficult. That's not who I am. No, Obi-Wan agreed. It's not. Which is why you're both valuable and dangerous. The Jedi moved to the window, looking out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. Count Dooku will come for you again. The Inquisitor's failure will only make him more determined. And if Dooku's master, Darth Sidious, takes personal interest... He shook his head. You have no idea what the Sith are capable of, Tony. They've been planning this war for decades, possibly centuries. You're a variable they didn't account for, which makes you a threat they'll eliminate. Let them try. Bravado won't save you from a Sith Lord. Obi-Wan turned back, his expression grave. These aren't ordinary warriors. They manipulate, corrupt, destroy. They'll find your weaknesses, everyone has them, and exploit them ruthlessly. Your guilt over past mistakes, your pride, your need to fix things. They'll use all of it against you. Tony thought about Palpatine's offer, about the Chancellor's too convenient understanding of his perspective. You don't trust Palpatine. Obi-Wan's reaction, the slightest hesitation, the careful neutrality, told Tony everything. The Chancellor is a politician. I trust him to act in his political interests. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. Obi-Wan moved toward the door. The Council meets in 1 hour. Master Yoda requests your presence. They'll want to discuss your long-term status, your role here, and what resources you'll require. And if I refuse, then you'll confirm their suspicions that you're more interested in disruption than cooperation. Obi-Wan paused at the doorway. Tony, I know you're used to operating independently, but you're in a galaxy at war, and neutrality isn't an option. Eventually, you'll have to choose a side. After Obi-Wan left, Tony stood alone in his workshop, surrounded by the scattered pieces of his armor, the weight of the Jedi's words settling on him like a physical burden. Jarvis, analysis. Sir, based on linguistic patterns and physiological indicators, Obi-Wan Kenobi is operating under extreme stress. His words were carefully chosen to guide you toward cooperation with the Jedi Council, while revealing his own doubts about their current path. He's attempting to manage you while simultaneously hoping you'll provide solutions he cannot see. He's playing both sides. Diplomatically, yes, but I believe he's sincere in his concerns. The Jedi Order is fracturing under the weight of this war, and your presence accelerates that process. Tony looked at his arc reactor, its steady glow a reminder of home, of everything he'd built and fought for in a universe that now seemed impossibly distant. He'd been in this galaxy less than a full day, and already he was caught in political machinations, military conflicts, and philosophical struggles that could reshape civilizations. He thought about Anakin's barely suppressed anger, Rex's awakening consciousness, Obi-Wan's exhausted pragmatism, Palpatine's calculating charm, the Inquisitor's dark power, the clone soldiers dying by thousands for a republic that viewed them as property, and somewhere in the shadows, a Sith Lord orchestrating it all. "Sir," Jarvis said quietly, "if I may offer an observation, in our world, you made your greatest impact not by joining existing power structures, but by disrupting them. Stark Industries, the Avengers, your relationship with governments. You've always operated at the intersection of systems, forcing them to change or adapt. You're saying I should do the same here. I'm saying that attempting to work within the Jedi Order or the Republic Senate will constrain you to their rules, their limitations, their compromises. But operating independently, as a force unto yourself." Jarvis paused. "That's when you've historically been most effective." Tony smiled grimly. "That's when I've also made my biggest mistakes." "True, but you learned from those mistakes. You evolved. Perhaps this galaxy needs someone who's already walked the path from arrogant weapon maker to reluctant hero." The workshop's lights dimmed as evening settled over Coruscant. Outside, clone guards changed shifts with military precision. The galaxy turned, and somewhere in the darkness, Count Dooku and his Sith Master planned their next move. Tony Stark had 1 hour before he faced the Jedi Council. 1 hour to decide how he wanted to play this. 1 hour to choose between cooperation and revolution. He picked up his helmet, his reflection distorted in its golden faceplate. "Jarvis, prep the armor for full assembly. If I'm going to meet the Council, I'm doing it on my terms." "Full combat configuration, sir." Tony thought about it, then shook his head. "No, something new. Something that shows them I'm not just a weapon or a tool. Something that proves technology can stand alongside the Force without bowing to it." "Understood, sir. May I suggest incorporating some of the local materials? A symbolic gesture that you're adapting to this galaxy while maintaining your independence." "Good thinking." Tony's hands moved with renewed purpose, his mind already designing, iterating, improving. "Let's show the Jedi what the future looks like." The council meeting would be interesting. The Jedi Council chamber was designed to intimidate. A circular room at the temple's pinnacle where 12 masters sat in judgment, backlit by Coruscant's setting sun, so their faces fell into shadow while subjects stood exposed in the center. Tony recognized psychological manipulation when he saw it. He'd used similar tactics in board meetings. He walked in wearing his newly reconfigured armor, sleeker lines incorporating materials from the temple's fabricators, the red and gold now accented with burnished bronze that caught the light. Not combat configuration, but definitely not civilian. A statement. "I'm here to talk, but on my terms." Master Yoda sat in his customary position, ancient eyes tracking Tony's entrance with unreadable intensity. Mace Windu looked carved from stone, his expression making clear he'd already reached conclusions about Tony. The other council members, various species, various ages, radiated curiosity, concern, and in a few cases, barely concealed hostility. "Mr. Stark," Mace began without preamble, "the council has debated your status for several hours. Your actions today saved countless lives, and for that, the Order is grateful. However, your presence represents a significant security risk and a disruptive influence on Republic military doctrine." "I'll take that as a compliment," Tony said, keeping his tone light despite the tension. "The disruptive part, not the risk part, though I guess they go together." "This is not a joke," Mace said sharply. "You possess technology beyond our understanding. You've encouraged clone soldiers to question their orders. You've survived 2 Separatist attacks that suggest Count Dooku considers you either a prize to capture or a threat to eliminate. The Council must decide how to proceed." "Proceed implies you think you have authority over me." Tony's voice hardened. "Let me save you some time. You don't. I'm not a citizen of your republic. I'm not a member of your order. I'm a sovereign individual who happens to be stranded in your galaxy. You can offer assistance, request cooperation, or stay out of my way. Those are your options." The chamber erupted, not in shouts. Jedi were too disciplined for that, but in a wave of tension so thick, Tony's sensors registered the atmospheric pressure change. Several council members leaned forward. Mace's jaw tightened. Even the usually serene members looked shocked at Tony's bluntness. Only Yoda seemed unsurprised. The ancient Jedi's ears twitched in what might have been amusement. "Bold words," Mace said, his voice dangerously quiet. "But you're in our temple, surrounded by Jedi Knights, on a planet under Republic jurisdiction. Your independence is theoretical." Tony felt the threat in those words. Jarvis whispered in his ear, "Sir, multiple Force signatures converging. 15 Jedi Knights approaching the council chamber. This may be an attempt at intimidation or house arrest," Tony finished quietly. He looked at Mace, then at each council member in turn. "So that's the play. Rapid and diplomatic language, but I'm a prisoner until you decide what to do with me." "Protective custody," a female Jedi with headtails offered. "For your safety and ours. Because I'm dangerous." Tony let his repulsors warm up, not threatening, just ready. "Because I don't fit into your neat categories of light and dark, Jedi and Sith. Because I look at your war and see manipulation instead of necessity. You understand nothing of our war." Another council member, an alien with insectoid features, spoke with clicking intensity. "The Separatists would enslave billions. The Sith would corrupt the galaxy. We fight to preserve peace and justice. By becoming generals, by commanding a slave army, by compromising every principle you claim to uphold." Tony's voice cut through the chamber. "I've been here less than a day, and I can see what you're too close to admit. This war is destroying everything you're supposedly fighting to protect, including yourselves." The silence that followed felt crushing. Tony had crossed a line, said what many of them probably thought but would never voice. He'd made enemies. Mace's expression confirmed that. But he'd also planted doubts. "Provocative words Mr. Stark speaks," Yoda said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Uncomfortable truths, perhaps, but wrong, is he?" The ancient Jedi's gaze swept the council. "For 3 years, fought this war we have. For 3 years, searched for the Sith Lord, we have failed. For 3 years, watched the Republic crumble and the Order with it. Yet continue on the same path we do. Why?" "Because there's no alternative," Mace said, but Tony heard the exhaustion underneath. "We can't abandon the Republic. We can't stop fighting. The Separatists won't negotiate, and the Sith won't reveal themselves." "Can't or won't," Tony pressed. "Because I've seen your tactical data, your intelligence reports. This war is being orchestrated to continue indefinitely. Every time one side gains advantage, something happens to balance it out. Every time peace talks begin, they collapse mysteriously. Someone wants this war to keep going, and you're all too busy fighting to ask who benefits." "The Sith Lord," Obi-Wan said from his position on the council. "Darth Sidious. We know he exists. We know he manipulates both sides, but without identifying him, you're fighting blind." Tony turned to face Obi-Wan directly. So stop fighting his war and start fighting yours. Stop reacting to Separatist attacks and start asking why they attack where they do, when they do. Stop accepting that the clone army just conveniently appeared right when you needed it. Stop trusting politicians who benefit from emergency powers that were supposed to be temporary. He saw it, the moment Obi-Wan's eyes widened fractionally. The moment several council members shifted uncomfortably. They'd thought about these things, probably discussed them in private. But hearing someone voice them openly, without diplomatic cushioning, forced them to confront the implications. You speak of Chancellor Palpatine, Mace said carefully. A good man who's been our ally throughout this war. Do I? Tony kept his tone neutral. I didn't mention any names, but interesting that you jumped there immediately. Mace stood, his hand moving to his lightsaber. Enough. The Council has been more than patient with your... Sit down, Master Windu, Yoda said, his voice carrying absolute authority despite its aged rasp. Finished, Mr. Stark is not, and listening, we should be. Foresee a path forward, I do not. Perhaps one outside our traditions can. Mace sat, but his expression promised this conversation wasn't over. Tony took a breath. This was the moment. Either he'd convince them he was worth listening to, or he'd cement his status as a threat to be contained. Here's what I know. Someone planned this war decades in advance. Someone ordered your clone army before anyone knew war was coming. Someone ensured both sides would be evenly matched. Someone benefits from the Jedi being scattered across the galaxy, fighting instead of investigating. Someone wants you distracted, exhausted, and compromised. Darth Sidious, Obi-Wan said. But we've searched. Have you? Or have you assumed he's hiding in some distant system, pulling strings remotely? Tony's mind worked the problem like he would an engineering challenge. Think about it. He'd need constant intelligence on both Republic and Separatist operations. He'd need to coordinate timing, manipulate political decisions, influence military strategy. That requires proximity and access. You're suggesting the Sith Lord is on Coruscant, a council member said, horror in her voice. In the Senate itself, I'm suggesting you consider all possibilities instead of the comfortable ones. Tony pulled up a holographic display from his gauntlet. He'd programmed basic interface with Republic technology during his workshop session. Jarvis, show them the attack pattern analysis. Data filled the center of the council chamber. 3 years of Separatist military operations, color-coded by timing and strategic value. Jarvis had worked miracles with the Republic's tactical database, and the patterns were damning. Every major Separatist victory has occurred immediately after Republic strategy sessions, Tony narrated. Every peace negotiation has collapsed following Senate subcommittee meetings. Every Jedi deployment that's walked into ambushes was based on intelligence from Republic sources. Your enemy isn't just reading your playbook, they're writing it. The council members stared at the data, watching as Jarvis highlighted correlation after correlation. Mace's expression had shifted from hostility to troubled consideration. Obi-Wan looked like he might be sick. Impossible, someone whispered. Security measures, encryption, force-sensitive detection. Which assume the infiltrator is using conventional methods, Tony interrupted. But what if they're not? What if there's someone so well-positioned that security doesn't question them? Someone with legitimate access to everything? You have no proof, Mace said, but his conviction had wavered. Correlation isn't causation. The patterns could be coincidence. Could be, Tony agreed. But in my experience, when too many coincidences line up, they're not coincidences. They're evidence of a conspiracy so obvious, nobody sees it because they're not willing to question the people they trust. Yoda closed his eyes, his small form seeming to age further. When he spoke, his voice carried profound sadness. Long have I sensed a shadow over the Republic. Long have I felt the dark side clouding everything. But see the source, I cannot. Too close, perhaps. Too willing to trust in institutions, in allies, in assumptions of safety. Master Yoda, Obi-Wan said carefully. If what Mr. Stark suggests is true, if there's a Sith Lord operating within the Republic's highest levels, then everyone is suspect. We couldn't trust anyone. Exactly, Tony said. Welcome to my world. Trust but verify. Question everything. Assume your enemies are smarter than they appear, and your allies might not be what they seem. He looked around the council chamber. I know this is uncomfortable. I know it goes against your culture of trust and harmony with the Force. But you're losing this war, not militarily, but philosophically. The Jedi Order is dying by degrees, and nobody wants to admit it. Presumptuous, one of the council members snapped. For an outsider to lecture us on our own order's survival. Necessary, Yoda countered. For one who sees clearly. When blind we have become. The ancient Jedi opened his eyes, fixing Tony with a stare that seemed to peer into his soul. But Tony Stark, understand this. Point out problems. You can. See patterns. You do. But solutions? Those require more than cleverness and technology. Require wisdom, sacrifice, and understanding of forces you do not yet grasp. Then teach me, Tony said simply. I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but I'm good at solving problems once I understand the parameters. Your force is a variable I can't quantify yet. Help me understand it, and maybe I can help you win this war. The council exchanged glances, silent communication that might have been force-based telepathy or simply years of working together. Finally, Mace spoke, his tone less hostile but still guarded. If we agree to work with you, and I'm not saying we will, what would you propose? Tony had been thinking about this since his conversation with Rex. First, security review. Full audit of who has access to what information. I'll handle the technical side with Jarvis. Second, independent investigation into the clone army's origins. Something doesn't add up about a military force ordered a decade before it was needed. Third, I need unrestricted access to Republic intelligence on Separatist leadership, not filtered through channels, direct access. You're asking for the kind of authority reserved for council members, a Jedi protested. I'm asking for the tools to do the job you can't or won't do yourselves, Tony corrected. And in exchange, I'll share what I learn. I'll fight alongside your forces when needed. I'll use my technology to defend Republic citizens. But I work independently, report my findings directly to this council, and maintain my autonomy. And if your investigation implicates someone we trust, Obi-Wan asked quietly, someone in a position of power, then we deal with it, Tony said. Together, no matter how uncomfortable the truth is. Yoda tapped his walking stick against the floor, the sound echoing in the chamber. Proposal the council must consider. But Tony Stark, understand, place our trust in you. We do. The consequences fall on all. Betray that trust, and... I won't, Tony said firmly. I've made mistakes. I've failed people, but I don't betray allies. Ever. Then allies. Perhaps we can be, Yoda said. But time to prove yourself. You will need. And patience, yours and ours, will be tested. Mace stood again. This time without hostility. The council will deliberate and provide our decision by morning. Until then, Mr. Stark, you're free to continue working in your fabrication space. The guards outside are for your protection, not your confinement. I'll take your word for it, Tony said, knowing full well the guards served both purposes. As he turned to leave, Obi-Wan caught his arm. Tony, a word, privately. They stepped into an adjoining meditation chamber, smaller, more intimate, with windows overlooking the temple's courtyard where young Jedi practiced forms with training sabers. "That was either very brave or very foolish," Obi-Wan said without preamble. "You've made powerful allegations without conclusive proof. I've presented evidence that demands investigation. There's a difference." "Is there?" "In politics." Obi-Wan moved to the window, watching the younglings train. "You've essentially accused the Chancellor, without naming him, of being complicit in the war's continuation. If that reaches the Senate, if Palpatine hears you're spreading such theories, then he'll react," Tony said. "And reactions reveal truth. If he's innocent, he'll cooperate with an investigation. If he's guilty, he'll obstruct it. Either way, we learn something. Or you get yourself killed," Obi-Wan said quietly. "The Sith don't play games, Tony. If you're right, if there is a Dark Lord operating within the Republic, then you've just painted a target on yourself that makes Count Dooku's interest look friendly. I've had targets on me before. I'm still here. In your universe, perhaps, but this is ours, and the rules are different." Obi-Wan turned, his expression troubled. "The Force grants the Sith powers you can't imagine. They can sense your emotions, manipulate your thoughts, corrupt your very soul. Your technology won't protect you from that." "Maybe not, but my stubbornness might." Tony checked his HUD, multiple system warnings as his armor continued adapting to the local environment. "Look, I appreciate the concern, but I didn't survive Afghanistan, Ultron, Thanos, and a dozen other near-death experiences by playing it safe. Sometimes you have to take risks to get results." "Thanos?" Obi-Wan's brow furrowed at the unfamiliar name. "Long story. Different universe's problem." Tony headed for the door, then paused. "Obi-Wan, honest question. Do you trust Palpatine?" The Jedi Master was silent for a long moment. "I trust that he believes he's acting in the Republic's best interests, whether those interests align with what's actually right." Obi-Wan's voice trailed off. "I don't know anymore. This war has blurred too many lines." "Then help me find the truth. That's all I'm asking." Tony left Obi-Wan in the meditation chamber and made his way back toward his workshop. The temple was quieter now. Most Jedi retired for the evening or deployed on missions across the galaxy. His footsteps echoed on ancient stone, and he felt the weight of millennia in these walls, generations of Force users walking these same paths, seeking wisdom and peace. And now an outsider in metal armor, questioning everything. "Jarvis, status report." "Sir, I've been monitoring Council communications. The debate is ongoing, but initial indicators suggest they'll agree to your proposal with significant oversight conditions. Master Yoda appears to be your strongest advocate. The 900-year-old green guy is on my side. I'll take it." Tony rounded a corner and nearly collided with Anakin, who was clearly waiting for him. "That was incredible," the young Jedi said, his eyes bright with something between admiration and concern. "You stood up to the entire council. Nobody does that." "Somebody needed to." Tony studied Anakin, seeing the conflict in him more clearly now. "You wanted to say those things yourself, didn't you?" Anakin's jaw tightened. "Every day. But I'm the chosen one, the prophesied savior of the Jedi Order. I'm supposed to bring balance, not cause disruption. So I follow orders, play the role, and watch everything I believe in slowly corrupt." "That's going to eat you alive," Tony said quietly. "Trust me, I know. I spent years being who other people needed me to be, nearly destroyed me. How'd you stop?" "Stopped caring what they thought and started caring what I thought." Tony considered how much to share. "Look, I don't understand your prophecy or your force, but I understand pressure and expectation. The Council wants you to be their perfect weapon. Palpatine wants you to be his loyal ally. Everyone wants a piece of the Chosen One. But what do you want, Anakin? The question seemed to stagger the young Jedi. I want to save people, to protect those I love, to end this war so no one else has to die. Noble goals, but achieved through whose methods? The Jedi's detached compassion, Palpatine's pragmatic politics. Or your own path? My own path led me to marry in secret, to hide my emotions, to walk the edge between light and dark every single day. Anakin's voice dropped to barely a whisper. The Council would expel me if they knew half of what I feel, what I've done. Tony filed that away. Married in secret, emotional suppression, operating outside order rules. Anakin Skywalker was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and in a galaxy full of manipulation, someone would eventually provide that spark. Then maybe, Tony said carefully, you need to decide if the Council's rules serve you or control you, if they're helping you become who you're meant to be or preventing it. That sounds like dark side philosophy, Anakin said, but there was no conviction in it. Or it sounds like freedom. Tony started walking toward his workshop, and Anakin fell into step beside him. The Sith say embrace your emotions, the Jedi say suppress them. Both sides claim to know the truth. But what if the real answer is somewhere in between? What if balance isn't choosing light over dark, but integrating both into something new? That's not how the Force works. How do you know? Has anyone tried? Tony glanced at the young Jedi. Look, I'm not trying to corrupt you or turn you to anyone's side. But I've learned that absolute positions, all light or all dark, completely logical or completely emotional, they don't work in practice. Reality is messy. People are complicated. Maybe the Force is too. They reached Tony's workshop, and Anakin lingered at the entrance. The Council will probably forbid me from talking to you after tonight. They'll say you're a bad influence. They're probably right, Tony admitted. But if you want to talk about the war, about pressure, about anything, I'm here. No judgment, no reporting to superiors, just two beings trying to figure things out. Anakin nodded slowly, something grateful in his expression. Thanks, Tony. And for what it's worth, I think you might be exactly what this galaxy needs. After Anakin left, Tony sealed his workshop and collapsed onto a bench, letting exhaustion finally catch up with him. His armor needed more work, his body needed sleep, and his mind needed to process everything that had happened in one impossible day. Jarvis, final analysis. Did I just make things better or worse? Insufficient data, sir. But based on historical patterns from our universe, you've initiated a cascade of changes that will fundamentally alter existing power structures. Whether that results in positive outcomes depends on variables I cannot currently model. So I might have just started a revolution or walked into a trap. Quite possibly both, sir. Tony laughed despite everything. Story of my life. Prepare full diagnostics for tomorrow. Something tells me things are about to get very complicated. Outside his workshop, clone guards changed shifts. Across the temple, Jedi meditated on the disruption Tony represented. In the Senate building, Chancellor Palpatine received reports on the council meeting with particular interest. And somewhere in the Outer Rim, Count Dooku watched holographic recordings of Tony's battle performance, planning his next move. The galaxy continued to turn, and Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, and now revolutionary, closed his eyes for a few hours of rest before the next crisis inevitably arrived. He'd been in this universe less than 24 hours. It felt like a lifetime. Tony woke to alarms screaming through the temple and Jarvis's urgent voice in his helmet. Sir, massive hyperspace signatures detected in orbit. Separatist fleet, Dreadnought-class capital ships, multiple destroyer escorts. This isn't a raid, it's an invasion force. Tony was on his feet and armoring up in seconds, muscle memory from too many 3 a.m. emergencies taking over. Numbers. Preliminary scans show 70-plus capital ships, fighter complement in the thousands. And sir, Count Dooku's flagship is leading the formation. He's here personally. Through the workshop's windows, Tony could see streaks of light in the pre-dawn sky, Republic defensive platforms engaging the Separatist fleet. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers across Coruscant's orbital envelope. This wasn't a test or a probe. This was total war brought to the Republic's doorstep. The workshop door burst open. Rex stood there, his armor scorched and his expression grim. Mr. Stark, the 501st is mobilizing. General Skywalker requests your assistance at the defense perimeter. The Separatists are dropping assault ships across the Senate district. How many? Too many. Rex's voice carried the exhaustion of a soldier who'd seen this pattern before. They're hitting us from 6 vectors simultaneously. The clone garrison is spread thin, and half our Jedi generals are off-world. This is the real thing. They're trying to take Coruscant. Tony's armor sealed with a hiss, systems coming online at 83% efficiency. Better than yesterday, not perfect, but functional. Jarvis, full tactical overlay. I want every enemy position, friendly force, and civilian concentration mapped. Working, sir. Republic defense grid is overwhelmed but holding. However, I'm detecting something unusual in the attack pattern. The Separatist forces are concentrating disproportionate strength around the Jedi Temple and Senate building. They're not trying to hold the planet, Tony realized. They're after specific targets. You, Rex said bluntly. And probably Chancellor Palpatine. Take out Republic leadership in one strike, the war ends. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen. Tony's repulsors lifted him off the floor. Where's Anakin? Leading the defense at the Temple's eastern approach. The Separatists landed a full battalion of battle droids there, and they're pushing hard. Tony shot through the Temple corridors, Rex running to keep up. They emerged onto a landing platform where chaos reigned. Clone troopers establishing firing positions, Jedi coordinating defenses, medical teams triaging wounded. The sky above was a light show of destruction as Republic and Separatist forces hammered each other with everything they had. And descending through that maelstrom came wave after wave of Separatist landing craft, disgorging battle droids by the hundreds. Tony's targeting systems locked onto the nearest transport, a bulky craft still 50 meters up and dropping fast. His repulsors flared, launching him skyward. Micro-missiles streaked from his shoulders, impacting the transport's engines. The craft lurched, spun, and crashed into an empty plaza rather than the crowded courtyard it had been targeting. Nice shot, Anakin's voice crackled over the comm. But we've got bigger problems. B-2 super battle droids are breaching the Temple's lower levels, and droidekas are setting up in the plaza. We're getting overwhelmed. Tony dove toward the plaza, his sensors painting targets faster than he could engage them. The battle droids he'd fought before, those skeletal B-1 units, were everywhere, their voices chirping in binary as they advanced. But the B-2s were different, bulkier, heavily armored, wrist rockets that streaked through the air leaving smoke trails. And the droidekas, those terrified him on principle. Spherical droids that unfolded into walking gun platforms protected by personal shields. Jarvis, analysis on those rolling death machines. Droidekas employ deflector shield technology similar to starship shields. Conventional weapons will be largely ineffective. However, the shields have a cyclic refresh rate. If we can time our attacks during the microsecond gap. Not helpful right now. Tony hit a group of B-1s with concentrated repulsor fire, scattering them like bowling pins. But a droideka had locked onto him, its twin blasters tracking with mechanical precision. Blue light flashed as Anakin's lightsaber intercepted the incoming fire. The young Jedi moved like liquid death, his blade deflecting bolts back at the droids with preternatural accuracy. "Stay close! The droideka's shields can't stop lightsabers!" Tony formed up with Anakin, their partnership from yesterday's battle resuming naturally. Clone troopers provided covering fire, while Jedi Knights carved through the droid ranks. It was coordinated chaos, the kind of desperate defense Tony had experienced in New York against the Chitauri. Except this time he was fighting alongside warrior monks instead of the Avengers. There, Rex pointed to a Separatist command transport landing on the temple's roof. "That's where their field commander will be. Take that out. We disrupt their coordination." On it. Tony rocketed toward the transport, but something made his sensors shriek warnings. A massive energy signature, dark, powerful, unmistakable. Count Dooku himself stepped from the transport, his curved lightsaber igniting with a red glow that seemed to drink the light. And he wasn't alone. The Inquisitor from yesterday's Senate attack emerged beside him, along with two other Darksiders Tony didn't recognize. A strike team of Force users, all radiated that same dark energy. "Well," Tony muttered, "this just got interesting." Dooku's voice carried across the battlefield, amplified by the Force. "Anthony Stark, the metal man who thinks technology can challenge the Force. How delightfully naive." "Count Dooku, I presume." Tony landed on the roof, keeping his distance. "Nice entrance, very dramatic. But if you're here for me, you could have just sent an invitation." Humor in the face of death. Admirable, if futile. Dooku moved with aristocratic grace, his elegant bearing at odds with the battle raging around them. "My master is most interested in you, Mr. Stark. Your arrival was unforeseen, a disruption in the carefully laid plans of millennia that cannot be tolerated. Your master." Tony's mind raced. "Darth Sidious, right? The puppet master hiding in the shadows. Let me guess, he wants me dead or captured before I figure out his game." Something flickered in Dooku's expression, surprise, quickly masked. "You are more perceptive than anticipated. Yes, Lord Sidious recognizes you as a threat, but he also sees opportunity. Your technology, your knowledge of other universes. Imagine what the Sith could accomplish with such power. Hard pass on the whole dark side recruitment pitch. Tony's weapon system's armed. I've dealt with megalomaniacs before. Always the same offer. Join us or die. Gets old. Then die you shall." Dooku's lightsaber came up. "Though I promise you, the Force grants deaths far more terrible than anything your technology can imagine." The Inquisitor and the other Darksiders spread out, flanking positions. Professional, coordinated, deadly. Tony's sensors tracked them all, calculating attack vectors, but the numbers weren't good. 4 Force users versus 1 armored human with damaged equipment. Then Anakin landed beside him, lightsaber blazing. "He's not alone, Dooku." "Ah, young Skywalker." Dooku's smile turned predatory. "The Chosen One himself. How fitting. Tell me, does the Council know you're friends with this outsider? Do they know how he's poisoning your thoughts against the Order?" "My thoughts are my own," Anakin shot back, but Tony heard the defensive edge. "Are they? Or has he simply given voice to doubts you already harbored?" Dooku gestured to the battle below. "Look at what the Jedi have become. Generals in a war they didn't start, commanding slaves they pretend to respect, serving politicians they claim to guide. Is this what the prophecy promised, Anakin? Is this balance?" Tony felt Anakin waver, not physically, but something in his presence shifted. Dooku's words were hitting home. Exploiting fractures Tony had himself widened. The dark side attack wasn't just physical. It was psychological warfare at the highest level. Don't listen to him, Tony said quietly. He's playing you. Classic manipulation. Identify insecurities, amplify them, offer simple solutions to complex problems. And you would know, Dooku said smoothly. Having mastered manipulation yourself. How many governments have you manipulated, Mr. Stark? How many people have died because of your weapons? You recognize my tactics because you've used them. That hit harder than Tony wanted to admit. Because it was true. He'd spent years manipulating people, competitors, politicians, even his own team sometimes. He justified it as necessary, pragmatic, for the greater good. Just like Dooku probably did. Difference is, Tony said, his voice hard. I learned better. I grew. I stopped making weapons for others and took personal responsibility for every action. You're still playing God with people's lives and calling it destiny. Philosophical debates bore me. Dooku's lightsaber hummed. The Inquisitor, deal with Skywalker. I'll handle our metal friend personally. The others, clear the temple. Kill everyone you find. The attack came with Force-enhanced speed. The Inquisitor engaged Anakin in a blur of red and blue light. The two other Darksiders leaped toward the temple's entrance, where clone troopers scrambled to establish defenses. And Dooku moved on Tony with the casual confidence of a master swordsman facing an amateur. His red blade carved through the air toward Tony's neck. Tony's repulsors fired, launching him backward. Dooku's lightsaber missed by centimeters. Close enough that Tony felt the heat through his armor's sensors. He countered with repulsor blasts, but Dooku deflected them with his blade, the plasma beam scattering harmlessly. Predictable, Dooku said. Your weapons are powerful but linear. The Force grants me sight beyond sight. I can see your attacks before you make them. Then see this. Tony's chest-mounted unibeam fired, his most powerful weapon, a concentrated arc reactor blast that could pierce tank armor. The beam lanced toward Dooku with devastating force. The Count raised his free hand, and the beam stopped. Held in place by invisible force, the energy crackling against Dooku's palm like he was catching a physical object. Then, with casual contempt, he redirected it skyward, where it dissipated harmlessly. Impressive technology, Dooku acknowledged. But child's play to one who commands the Force. Tony's tactical analysis went into overdrive. Energy attacks weren't working. Dooku could deflect or absorb them. Physical attacks? The lightsaber would probably cut through anything Tony threw. Speed advantage? Maybe. But Dooku's precognition negated that. Overwhelming firepower. Couldn't risk civilian casualties with all the clone troopers in the area. He needed a new approach. Jarvis, remember that sonic disruptor we developed for crowd control? Sir, that prototype was never field-tested. The frequency modulation could do it anyway. Target his inner ear. Jedi precognition won't help if his balance system is scrambled. Tony's gauntlets reconfigured, emitters shifting to produce specific frequency patterns. He fired not energy blasts, but focused sound waves, pitched at frequencies designed to disrupt humanoid vestibular systems. Dooku staggered, just for a second, but enough. His precognition might let him sense attacks coming, but it didn't protect against invisible sound waves that bypassed his Force senses. Tony pressed the advantage, firing micro-missiles that forced Dooku to divide his attention. Clever, Dooku growled, recovering faster than Tony hoped. You adapt quickly, but even your technology has limits. The Count's free hand extended, and Tony felt his armor seize up. Not physically, his servos and repulsors still functioned, but his movement felt constrained, like he was pushing through invisible molasses. Force telekinesis, but applied with surgical precision to create drag against his motion. Tony fired everything, repulsors, missiles, the unibeam, sonic disruptors. But Dooku wove through the onslaught like he was dancing, his movements economical and precise. Every attack missed by margins so small it was insulting. "You cannot win," Dooku said, closing the distance. "The Force grants power beyond your comprehension. Your armor, your weapons, your genius, all meaningless against the dark side." His lightsaber descended toward Tony's arc reactor. Anakin intercepted, his blue blade meeting Dooku's red in a shower of sparks. The two lightsabers locked, and Tony saw the strain on Anakin's face as he matched strength with the Sith Lord. "Your student has grown strong," Dooku observed. "But not strong enough. He never will be, shackled by Jedi doctrine. You could be so much more, Anakin. Lord Sidious could show you." "I'll never join you," Anakin snarled, but Tony heard the doubt underneath. The temptation. Tony needed to end this before Dooku's psychological warfare broke through. The Inquisitor was pushing Anakin hard, exploiting every opening. The other Darksiders had breached the temple and were carving through clone defenders. The battle was turning against them. Then Tony's sensors picked up something new. Massive energy signatures approaching at high speed. Republic reinforcements. No, the power output was wrong. These were Separatist ships, but far more advanced than the standard destroyers. "Jarvis, what am I looking at?" "Sir, those appear to be experimental dreadnoughts with enhanced shield systems and what I can only describe as Force-enhanced weaponry. The energy signatures are impossible by conventional physics." "Force-enhanced technology." Tony's mind raced. "They're combining the dark side with military hardware. Dooku wasn't just after me. This whole attack is a demonstration." "A demonstration of what, sir?" "That the Separatists have figured out how to merge magic and science. If they can mass-produce Force-augmented weapons." Tony didn't finish the thought. The implications were terrifying. The Republic's conventional military couldn't match that. The Jedi were already spread thin. If the Separatists weaponized the Force itself... "Ah, you see it now." Dooku had disengaged from Anakin, both combatants momentarily pausing. "My master's vision extends far beyond this petty war. He's been preparing for something greater. And you, Mr. Stark, represent both a threat and an opportunity to those plans." "What plans?" "The end of the Jedi Order, the fall of the Republic. The rise of a new order where the strong rule and the weak serve." Dooku's smile was cold. "Lord Sidious has been orchestrating this for decades, every move calculated, every piece positioned. And now, at the moment of culmination, you appear, an anomaly that could disrupt everything or accelerate it." "I vote for disruption," Tony said, but his mind was already working the puzzle. Decades of planning. Both sides controlled. Force-enhanced weapons, an endgame approaching. And somewhere in the Republic, Darth Sidious pulling strings. Palpatine. It had to be. "Sir, multiple contacts incoming from the temple interior. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Windu leading a Jedi strike team." The cavalry had arrived. Obi-Wan and Mace burst onto the roof with 6 other Jedi Knights, their lightsabers forming a wall of light. The Darksiders regrouped, suddenly outnumbered. Dooku assessed the situation with a glance. "A tactical withdrawal seems prudent, but this isn't over, Mr. Stark. You and I will meet again, and next time, there will be no interruptions." "Looking forward to it," Tony shot back. "Are you?" Dooku's expression turned thoughtful. "I wonder, because next time, my master himself may take an interest, and when Darth Sidious sets his sights on something, Mr. Stark, it ceases to exist, one way or another. Dark side Force users could apparently teleport, or something close enough." Dooku and his team vanished in swirls of shadow, retreating to their transport as the Jedi charged. The ship lifted off, shields absorbing the pursuing fire as it streaked back toward the Separatist fleet. The battle wasn't over. Droids still fought throughout the Temple District, but the command structure had withdrawn. Without the Darksiders coordinating them, the droid forces became predictable, and clone troopers systematically eliminated them. Tony stood on the roof, his armor smoking, systems redlining from the intensity of the engagement. Around him, Jedi caught their breath. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber, his hands shaking from exhaustion or adrenaline or something else. "That was a warning," Obi-Wan said, surveying the damage. "Dooku showed us Force-enhanced technology, proved he could strike at Coruscant's heart anytime he wishes. Demonstrated that we're outmatched even in our stronghold." "Not a warning," Tony corrected, watching the Separatist fleet begin its withdrawal. "A message, directed at me specifically. Join us, or we'll destroy everything you care about." "And your response?" Mace asked. Tony's arc reactor pulsed with determination. "Same as always. I don't negotiate with terrorists, I don't bow to bullies, and I definitely don't work for someone hiding in the shadows, pretending to be a mystical puppet master." "Even if refusing means Coruscant burns," Mace pressed. "Especially then, because giving in to fear is how they win." Tony met the Jedi Master's eyes. "You taught me that. The Jedi Code, there is no emotion, there is peace, there is no chaos, there is harmony, right?" "You've been studying," Obi-Wan said with faint surprise. "Jarvis downloaded your holocron archives, did some reading during my workshop breaks." Tony looked at each Jedi in turn. "But here's what I realized. You're so busy following the code, you've forgotten why it exists. It's not about suppressing emotion or imposing order. It's about finding balance within chaos, peace through understanding, not control. And you learned this in one day of study?" Mace's skepticism was clear. "I learned it from living it, from making every mistake possible and surviving the consequences." Tony's voice hardened. "Dooku is right about one thing. The Jedi Order is dying, but not because the dark side is stronger, because you've forgotten how to adapt, how to question, how to grow. You're so terrified of falling that you've stopped moving forward." The silence that followed was broken by Jarvis. "Sir, Republic Defense Grid reports Separatist fleet fully withdrawn. Casualty reports coming in. 247 clone troopers killed, 522 wounded, 14 Jedi casualties. Civilian deaths estimated in the thousands. Thousands. Because Dooku had wanted to send Tony a message, because the Sith were playing games with people's lives." Tony felt his arc reactor pulse faster, anger building, the same rage that had driven him to build the first armor in that cave. But this time, he channeled it, controlled it, used it. "Jarvis, I want full analysis of those Force-enhanced weapons, everything we recorded, every energy signature, every technological component. If they can merge the Force with technology, so can we. Sir, attempting to replicate Force-based systems without understanding the Force itself, then I'll learn." Tony turned to Yoda, who'd arrived with the Jedi reinforcements and stood watching silently. "Master Yoda, I need to understand the Force, not philosophically, scientifically. Its mechanics, its properties, how it interfaces with physical matter and energy. Can that be taught?" The ancient Jedi studied Tony with those penetrating eyes. "To sense the Force, one must be open to it. Empty the mind, quiet the ego. Your way, this is not." "Then teach me a different way," Tony insisted. "I'm an engineer. I understand systems, interactions, cause and effect. Show me the Force as a system, and I'll figure out how to work with it." "Dangerous this path is," Yoda warned. "The Sith attempted similar, to bend the Force to their will through knowledge rather than harmony. Corruption, the result was. I'm not trying to bend it. I'm trying to partner with it." Tony's mind was already racing ahead. Dooku proved Force and technology can integrate, so why let the dark side monopolize that advancement? Why not develop Force-augmented systems that serve the light? The Jedi Council members looked troubled, but Tony saw Anakin's eyes light up with possibility. The young Jedi got it, saw the potential Tony was describing. "It's heretical," Mace said flatly. "The Force is not a tool to be engineered." "Why not?" Tony challenged. "You use lightsabers, technological devices powered by Force-reactive crystals. You pilot starships enhanced by Force-sensitive navigation. You already merge technology and mysticism. I'm just suggesting we do it systematically instead of pretending they're separate." Obi-Wan exchanged glances with Mace, silent communication Tony couldn't interpret. Finally, Yoda tapped his stick. "Unorthodox, your proposal is, against Jedi tradition, but..." The ancient master paused. "Right, you may be. Evolved, the Sith have. Stagnant, we remain. Adapt we must, or perish we will." "Master Yoda," Mace began. "Decided, my mind is. Teach Tony Stark, we shall, but on one condition." Yoda's gaze intensified. "Train also in Jedi philosophy he must. Balance between knowledge and wisdom he must find. Or the dark side, consume him it will." Tony knew a negotiation when he heard one. "Deal, but I teach the Jedi about technology in return. Share knowledge both ways. Make this a partnership, not a master-student relationship." "Acceptable," Yoda agreed. "But know this, Tony Stark. Opened a door you have. Through it, both salvation and destruction may enter. Guard it well, we must." As the sun rose over Coruscant, burning away the smoke from the night's battle, Tony Stark stood among Jedi Masters and clone warriors, having just committed to a path that would either save the galaxy or doom it. Either way, things would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since Dooku's attack, and the temple's meditation chamber had become Tony's second workshop. Advanced holographic displays floated alongside ancient Jedi holocrons, creating a strange fusion of cutting-edge technology and millennia-old wisdom. Jarvis processed data streams while Master Yoda sat on a meditation cushion, observing Tony's attempts to bridge two fundamentally different ways of understanding reality. "Frustrated you are," Yoda noted, not opening his eyes. "Feel it, I can. Your mind races, seeks patterns, demands logic where mystery exists." "Because the Force has rules," Tony insisted, manipulating a holographic model showing midi-chlorian distribution patterns. "Everything has rules. I just need to find them." "Rules, yes, but not your rules, not mathematics and physics alone." Yoda's eyes opened. Ancient and knowing. Life itself, the Force is. Life defies simple quantification. Tony had heard variations of this lecture for 3 weeks. He'd also made more progress understanding the Force than any non-Force sensitive in Jedi history, according to increasingly concerned council reports. Jarvis had cataloged thousands of Force phenomena, cross-referenced them with physics, and developed working theories that made Jedi Masters deeply uncomfortable. "Sir," Jarvis interrupted, "Captain Rex is requesting immediate audience. He says it's urgent." Tony waved the holographic displays away. "Send him in." Rex entered looking worse than Tony had ever seen him. Armor scorched, exhaustion in every line of his body, and something else. Fear, maybe, or realization. "We need to talk," Rex said without preamble. "Privately." Yoda nodded knowingly. "Leave you two, I shall. But Tony Stark, remember what taught you I have. The Force connects all living things. Act in isolation, and consequences ripple. Act in harmony, and the galaxy changes for the better. I know, Master." Tony waited until Yoda left before turning to Rex. "What happened?" Rex pulled off his helmet, revealing a face carved by stress and combat. I followed your advice, started asking questions, thinking for myself, treating orders as suggestions rather than absolute commands. He paused. Other clones noticed, started asking their own questions. Word spread through the 501st, then to other battalions. And now someone's noticed, Tony finished. The Kaminoans sent representatives. They're conducting behavioral assessments on clones flagged for independent thinking. Rex's voice went hard. 3 of my men have been shipped back to Kamino for reconditioning, including Fives, one of the best damn soldiers I've ever served with. Tony's arc reactor pulsed faster. Reconditioning, memory wipes, personality modification. Worse, they adjust our genetic programming, suppress the parts that make us individuals. Fives will come back obedient, efficient, and empty. Rex's hands clenched into fists. I did this. I listened to you, encouraged the men to think, and now they're being erased for it. No, Tony stood, his voice firm. The Kaminoans did this. The Republic did this by buying a slave army and pretending it was ethical. You didn't create the problem, Rex. You just stopped ignoring it. That doesn't bring Fives back. Maybe not, but it means we stop letting it happen. Tony pulled up a holographic display, Republic military logistics, clone production facilities, command structures. Jarvis has been analyzing the clone program since we got here. The contracts, the oversight, the legal framework. You know what we found? That we're property, Rex said bitterly. That the contracts are full of loopholes. The Kaminoans operate under Republic law, which means they're subject to Republic courts. The reconditioning program violates at least 6 different sentient rights statutes, but nobody's challenged them because the Senate doesn't want to admit they're enslaving millions of beings. Rex stared at the data. You're talking about a legal battle. That could take years. Usually, yes. But I've got something the Republic legal system has never seen before. An outside observer with no political allegiances, unlimited resources, and a very expensive habit of winning court cases. Tony's smile was sharp. I've taken on governments before, Rex. I fought corporate monopolies, military-industrial complexes, and corrupt bureaucracies. The Kaminoans are amateurs compared to what I've dealt with. The Senate will block you. The Jedi Council will refuse to support. Let them try. Tony's arc reactor glowed brighter. I've spent 3 weeks studying Force theory and Jedi philosophy. You know what I learned? The Force is about balance, but the Jedi interpret that as maintaining status quo. Real balance means challenging injustice, disrupting corruption, forcing change even when it's uncomfortable. That's not how Master Yoda teaches it. No, but it's what the Force is telling me. Tony tapped his chest. I've been feeling it, this energy that connects everything. It's subtle, but it's there. And it's been screaming at me that the clone situation is wrong. Not strategically wrong. Fundamentally, cosmically wrong. The kind of wrong that corrupts everything it touches. Rex looked at Tony with something approaching hope. If you challenge the Kaminoans, you'll make powerful enemies. The Senate, the military contractors, maybe even the Jedi. I've made worse enemies for better reasons. Tony pulled up another display. Legal precedents, Republic constitutional law, sentient rights cases going back centuries. Jarvis, prepare legal filing. Republic Supreme Court. Emergency injunction to halt all clone reconditioning pending judicial review of the program's legality. Sir, filing with the Supreme Court requires representation by a licensed Republic attorney. Then find me the best lawyer on Coruscant who isn't in the Senate's pocket. Already done, sir. Attorney Shelta Cole, Twi'lek legal specialist in sentient rights cases. 47 wins, 0 losses, reputation for taking impossible cases. Currently representing... Jarvis paused. currently representing a group of freed slaves suing their former owners. Perfect. Set up a meeting. Tony looked at Rex. You're not doing this alone anymore. The 501st, every clone battalion, they deserve better than being treated as disposable property. And I'm going to make sure they get it. Rex's expression wavered between gratitude and concern. This could destroy you, politically. The Council is already suspicious of your influence. If you openly challenge the Republic's military structure, then I'll force them to choose between their principles and their comfort. Tony headed for the door. Come on. If we're starting a revolution, we should probably tell Anakin. He'll either try to stop us or want to help. Either way, I'd rather have him informed. They found Anakin in the temple's training hall, working through lightsaber forms with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. The young Jedi's movements were technically perfect, but carried an edge of barely contained aggression that made Tony's instincts prickle. Anakin, we need to talk. The Jedi completed his form before deactivating his blade. If this is about you teaching Rex to question orders, the Council already lectured me. They think you're corrupting the chain of command. I'm liberating thinking beings from slavery. There's a difference. Tony outlined his plan, the legal challenge, the injunction, the systematic dismantling of the Kaminoan reconditioning program. Anakin listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Tony finished, the young Jedi was quiet for a long moment. The Council will never support this, Anakin finally said. They'll see it as disrupting the war effort, undermining Republic military readiness. Master Windu already thinks you're a dangerous influence. I know. I'm asking anyway. Not for the Council's permission. For yours. Tony met Anakin's eyes. You fought beside these clones. You call them brothers. Are you willing to stand by while they're being erased for developing personalities? Anakin's jaw tightened. You're asking me to choose between the Jedi Order and doing what's right. I'm asking you to stop pretending those are different things. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Rex shifted uncomfortably, clearly uncertain whether he should be witnessing this conversation. But Anakin didn't look away, didn't deflect. The Order has rules for a reason, Anakin said, but his conviction wavered. Attachment leads to fear. Fear leads to anger, the path to the dark side. Or, Tony countered, caring about people leads to action. Action leads to change. The path to actually making a difference, instead of meditating while the galaxy burns. That's not fair. Life's not fair. The Force isn't fair. The galaxy definitely isn't fair. Tony's voice softened. Anakin, I've watched you for 3 weeks. You're torn between what you've been taught and what you feel, between Jedi dogma and your own conscience. And the harder you try to suppress that conflict, the more it's eating you alive. Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber, not threatening, but seeking comfort. You sound like Palpatine. He says similar things, that the Jedi are too rigid, that I should trust my feelings more. Then maybe Palpatine and I agree on that one thing, even if we disagree on everything else. Tony paused. But here's the difference. I'm not asking you to embrace anger or give in to dark impulses. I'm asking you to recognize that caring about people isn't a weakness, that fighting for justice isn't falling to darkness, that the Jedi Code might need updating for a galaxy that's changed since it was written. Heresy, Anakin said, but he was almost smiling. You're describing heresy, and you know it. I prefer evolution. Sounds less likely to get me kicked out of the temple. Tony glanced at Rex, then back to Anakin. Look, you don't have to publicly support this. I understand the political position you're in, but don't actively oppose it. Don't let the Council pressure you into defending a system you know is wrong. Anakin closed his eyes, and Tony felt that Force energy shift around the young Jedi, a struggle between training and instinct, dogma and conscience. When Anakin opened his eyes again, something had changed. "I'll talk to Padme," Anakin said quietly. "She's a senator. She has contacts, influence. If anyone can navigate Republic politics to support your legal challenge, it's her." Tony caught the name Padme, said with affection that went beyond professional respect. The secret marriage Rex had hinted about. Anakin was trusting Tony with information that could get him expelled from the Order. "Thank you," Tony said simply. "And Anakin, whatever the Council decides about me, remember, you're not defined by their rules. You're defined by your choices. Make them count." After Anakin left, Rex turned to Tony. "You're playing a dangerous game, encouraging a Jedi to question the Order, challenging Republic military policy, making enemies of the most powerful institutions in the galaxy." "Yeah, well, subtle's never been my style." Tony checked his chronometer. "We've got 6 hours before the legal filing goes through." "That's 6 hours for word to leak, for political pressure to mount, for someone to try stopping us." "The Chancellor," Rex said grimly. "If Palpatine hears about this, he'll use emergency powers to block it. He's done it before, claimed military necessity to override civilian courts. Then we make sure the filing is public before he can act. Jarvis, transmit our legal brief to every major news network on Coruscant. I want this story everywhere before Palpatine knows it exists." "Sir, that's strategically sound, but will make reconciliation with Republic leadership virtually impossible." "Good. I'm tired of reconciliation with people who enable slavery." Tony's voice went cold. "Sometimes you can't reform a system from within. Sometimes you have to tear it down and build something better from the pieces." The next hours were a whirlwind. Attorney Shelta Cole, a brilliant Twi'lek woman with purple skin and sharper instincts than most humans, arrived at the temple and immediately began preparing legal documentation. The story hit the HoloNet news cycles like a bomb. Mysterious outsider challenges clone military program. Sentient rights. Case could reshape Republic military. Jedi temple becomes center of legal controversy. The Senate exploded. Senators from both pro-military and pro-rights factions demanded hearings. The Jedi Council convened emergency sessions. And Chancellor Palpatine, according to news reports, expressed deep concern about challenges to military readiness during wartime. Tony watched it all from his workshop, monitoring data feeds while Jarvis tracked political movements. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed steadily, a reminder that he'd survived worse than political backlash. He'd faced down gods, aliens, and his own demons. A few senators and bureaucrats didn't scare him. "Sir," Jarvis interrupted. "Incoming transmission, priority alpha encryption. Source, Count Dooku." That got Tony's attention. "Put it through, audio only." Dooku's cultured voice filled the workshop. "Mr. Stark, I must congratulate you on the chaos you've created. In 3 weeks, you've accomplished what the Separatists couldn't in 3 years, turned the Republic against itself. If you're calling to gloat, I'm busy. I'm calling to offer perspective." Dooku's tone turned serious. "You've challenged the clone program, exposed Republic hypocrisy, forced the Jedi to confront their compromises. You've done exactly what Lord Sidious hoped you would." Tony's blood went cold. "Explain." "My master doesn't just plan for victory, Mr. Stark. He plans for every contingency. When you arrived, he recognized you as either an asset to recruit or a catalyst to exploit. Your refusal to join us moved you into the latter category. And now, by challenging the Republic from within, you're serving his purposes perfectly. You're saying this is what Sidious wanted. I'm saying chaos serves the dark side, regardless of who creates it. The Republic tears itself apart over clone rights. The Jedi Order fractures over whether to support you. Political factions war over military policy. And through it all, Lord Sidious consolidates power as the one steady hand in a storm of change. Dooku paused. You think you're the revolutionary, Mr. Stark. But you're just another piece on the board. The question is, will you realize it before the game ends? The transmission cut off, leaving Tony in silence. Jarvis, analysis. Sir, Count Dooku's psychological profile suggests he was attempting to undermine your confidence and create doubt about your actions. However, his points about unintended consequences merit consideration. Rapid systemic change in a society under stress can indeed create opportunities for authoritarian consolidation. Are you saying I should back off? I'm saying you should be aware that revolution, even justified revolution, carries risks. The cure can be worse than the disease if not carefully managed. Tony stared at his arc reactor's glow, thinking about Ultron, about how his desire to protect had created something monstrous, about how good intentions could pave roads to hell. But he also thought about Fives and the other clones being shipped off for reconditioning, about Rex and his brothers developing consciousness and being punished for it, about a galaxy that treated thinking beings as property and called it military necessity. No, Tony said firmly. Dooku's trying to manipulate me with the same doubts I already have. Yes, there are risks. Yes, Sidious might exploit the chaos. But that doesn't make the status quo acceptable. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them, even knowing the pieces might not land where you want. A very Stark family philosophy, sir. Yeah, well, it's gotten me this far. Tony pulled up the legal filing, pages of precedents, arguments, constitutional interpretations. Attorney Cole had done brilliant work, building an ironclad case that the Kaminoan reconditioning program violated sentient rights laws dating back to the Republic's founding. The Supreme Court would have to rule. Senators would have to take positions. The Jedi would have to choose between their military role and their ethical principles. And Palpatine would have to reveal his hand, support sentient rights, and risk losing military efficiency, or oppose them and expose his true priorities. Either way, Tony would learn something valuable. The workshop door opened, and Obi-Wan entered, looking more tired than Tony had ever seen him. The Jedi Master moved to the window, staring out at Coruscant's endless cityscape. The Council met for 6 hours, Obi-Wan said without preamble. Half wanted to expel you from the temple immediately. Master Windu proposed bringing formal charges of sedition. Master Yoda actually defended you. Yoda did. He said the Force was guiding you, even if your methods were unorthodox. Obi-Wan turned, his expression grave. But Tony, you've put us in an impossible position. If the Jedi support your legal challenge, we're defying the Senate and the Chancellor. If we oppose it, we're defending slavery. There's no neutral ground here. Good. Neutrality is complicity. I'm tired of watching good people do nothing because the politics are complicated. And I'm tired of watching you tear down every institution you encounter. Obi-Wan's composure cracked, frustration bleeding through. The Republic isn't perfect. The Jedi Order isn't perfect. The clone program is ethically questionable at best. But these are the systems that hold the galaxy together. You can't just demolish them and hope something better emerges from the rubble. Why not? That's exactly what worked in my universe. This isn't your universe, Obi-Wan's voice rose. You don't understand the forces at play here, the delicate balances, the consequences of rapid change in a society this large. The Sith are waiting for exactly this kind of chaos. They thrive on it, and you're giving them everything they want. Dooku said the same thing. Funny how everyone telling me to slow down also happens to benefit from the status quo. Tony's voice hardened. But here's what I understand. Right and wrong don't change based on convenience. Slavery is wrong whether it's politically complicated or not. And if exposing that truth helps the Sith, then maybe the Republic deserves to fall. The silence that followed was absolute. Obi-Wan stared at Tony with something between horror and grudging respect. "You really mean that?" Obi-Wan said quietly. "You'd rather see the Republic destroyed than perpetuate injustice." "I'd rather see it transformed, but if destruction is necessary for transformation, then yes." Tony met Obi-Wan's eyes. "I've been in your position, Obi-Wan. I've defended systems I knew were broken because changing them seemed too hard, too dangerous, too destabilizing. And you know what? People died because of my cowardice, because I chose comfort over courage. That's not fair. Life's not fair. But it does give second chances, and I'm not wasting mine." Tony's arc reactor pulsed. "The filing is public. The case is moving forward. You and the Council can support it, oppose it, or stay silent. But it's happening regardless." Obi-Wan nodded slowly, something resigned in his expression. "Master Yoda asked me to give you a message. The path you walk, Tony Stark, leads to great change. But whether that change brings balance or catastrophe, clouded the future remains. Trust the Force you must, but trust yourself also, for connected the two are in ways you do not yet understand." "Cryptic as always," Tony muttered. "That's the point." Obi-Wan moved toward the door, then paused. "Tony, whatever happens next, whatever the Council decides, whatever political firestorm this ignites, I want you to know you're not wrong. About the clones, about the compromises, about the Order losing its way. You're not wrong. But being right and being wise aren't always the same thing." Obi-Wan left, his robes swirling behind him. Tony stood alone in his workshop, surrounded by the fusion of technology and mysticism he'd created. His armor gleamed in the low light, more advanced now than when he'd arrived, incorporating force-reactive materials, energy distribution systems that resonated with the mysterious power permeating this galaxy, weapons that could challenge even lightsaber-wielding opponents. He'd spent 3 weeks learning, adapting, preparing for the battles ahead. And now those battles were coming. Jarvis, status report on all fronts. Legal filing confirmed with Republic Supreme Court. First hearing scheduled in 48 hours. HoloNet coverage at 94% saturation. This is the leading story across the galaxy. Senate emergency session called for tomorrow morning. And sir, I'm detecting unusual activity in Chancellor Palpatine's office. Encrypted communications, meetings with military leadership, executive guard mobilization. He's preparing for something. Yes, sir. Based on pattern analysis, I believe the Chancellor intends to invoke emergency powers to override the Supreme Court before they can rule. Historical precedent suggests he'll turn this into a crisis that requires his direct intervention, make himself the only solution to the chaos. Tony's mind raced ahead. Classic authoritarian playbook. Create the emergency, then solve it by consolidating power. Precisely, sir. And if my analysis is correct, Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious. Tony had suspected. The evidence had been mounting. But hearing Jarvis confirm it made it real. Can you prove it? Not definitively. But circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. His political timing, his access to information that enabled Separatist attacks, his manipulation of both sides of the conflict, his unusual interest in you. If I were to construct a profile of Darth Sidious based on observed behaviors, it would match Chancellor Palpatine with 94.7% probability. That's not proof we can take to the Jedi Council. No, sir, but it's proof enough for us. Tony looked at his reflection in the workshop's polished surfaces. A man in armor, standing at the intersection of two civilizations, about to force a galaxy to choose between its comfortable lies and uncomfortable truths. He thought about Pepper, about the Avengers, about Earth, all impossibly far away, possibly in another universe entirely. He might never get home. Might spend the rest of his life in this strange galaxy fighting someone else's war. But if that was his fate, he'd make it count. Jarvis, prep the armor for full combat configuration. If Palpatine makes his move, I want to be ready. Sir, engaging the Sith Lord directly is probably suicide. I know. Tony's arc reactor glowed brighter. But standing by while he destroys everything is definitely death. At least fighting gives us a chance. The night settled over Coruscant, and across the galaxy, forces moved in response to one man's decision to challenge the established order. The Jedi Council debated. The Senate prepared for war, political and possibly literal. And in his office, Chancellor Palpatine smiled, watching his plans advance toward their inevitable conclusion. Tony Stark had arrived in this galaxy by accident. He would change it by design, or die trying. The Republic's Supreme Court ruling came faster than anyone expected, a temporary injunction halting all clone reconditioning pending full judicial review. It was a victory, but a hollow one. Within hours, Chancellor Palpatine addressed the Senate, his voice grave with manufactured concern, speaking of military readiness and wartime necessity. Emergency powers were invoked. The court's ruling was suspended for the duration of the crisis. And just like that, Tony watched democracy die to thunderous applause. But something else died too. The illusion that the Republic could be saved by working within its systems. The Jedi Council understood it, though few would admit it openly. Obi-Wan had said it best during their last conversation. You've shown us what we already knew, but we're too afraid to face. The Republic is already lost. What remains is deciding what comes next. Tony stood on the temple's highest platform, watching the sun set over Coruscant. His armor was complete now, fully adapted to this galaxy, incorporating force-reactive materials that let his technology interface with the mystical energy field in ways that terrified Jedi Masters and intrigued younger Jedi like Anakin. He'd become something new, not quite Jedi, not quite Sith, not quite anything this galaxy had words for. A bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change, a variable the Sith hadn't accounted for. Captain Rex and the 501st had formally requested to serve under Tony's command, a violation of chain of command that the Council had surprisingly approved. Anakin had quietly begun training with Tony, learning to merge his force abilities with tactical thinking that didn't rely on precognition or mystical insight. Even Obi-Wan, though publicly maintaining proper Jedi neutrality, had started asking questions about alternative approaches to the war. The revolution had begun, not with armies or grand declarations, but with individuals choosing to think differently, to question assumptions, to forge new paths. And somewhere in the Senate building, Darth Sidious watched it all unfold, his plans shifting to accommodate this unexpected variable. Tony knew the Sith Lord would strike eventually, directly, personally, with the full weight of dark side power that even Tony's advanced armor might not withstand. But he also knew something Sidious didn't. Tony Stark had died once to save his universe. Had held Infinity Stones that should have killed him instantly. Had faced gods, monsters, and his own demons. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The Force whispered around him, that mysterious energy he was just beginning to understand. It showed him possibilities, futures where the Republic transformed into something better, timelines where the Jedi Order evolved beyond its dogmatic limitations, paths where democracy wasn't just preserved, but strengthened through the trial of fire, and darker paths too. Futures where Palpatine won, where the galaxy burned, where Tony's interference made everything worse. The future wasn't written. The Force showed probabilities, not certainties, which meant everything was still possible. Tony Stark had crashed into this galaxy by accident, a stranger in a strange land with technology that shouldn't exist and ideas that challenged millennia of tradition. He'd made enemies of the powerful, allies of the unexpected, and started changes that couldn't be undone. The Clone Wars would continue. The Sith's plans would advance. The Republic would face its darkest hour. But now, there was something new in the equation. Something unpredictable, stubborn, and refusing to accept that the galaxy's problems were unsolvable. An Iron Man in a war of force and destiny. And the galaxy would never be the same. Tony's arc reactor pulsed one final time as night fell over Coruscant, a light in the darkness, a promise of resistance, a declaration that tyranny, no matter how carefully planned or mystically empowered, would not go unchallenged. The real battle was just beginning. May the Force be with you. More stories await. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.